Coming up next on the Wet Fly Swing podcast.
What you're going to do next is you're going to buy those wet wading socks, those like neoprene socks that you wear in the summertime when you're not wearing waders so your boot fits, you know what I mean? And so you get your thinnest merino wool sock or like a dress sock, something really thin. You put that on. Then you put on the neoprene wading sock. Then you get into your waders. So you have 6 millimeters of neoprene foam between your foot and the boot instead of 3. And it is night and day. You will never be cold ever again. I don't care how cold the water gets.
That was Eric Leininger with a huge cold water tip to keep your feet warm and toasty while wading this winter. Kings versus Coho, Steelhead versus Musky, and the Mega Mend today on The Swing.
Welcome to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show, where you discover tips, tricks, and tools from the leading names in fly fishing today.
Hey, how's it going today? Thanks for stopping by the show. Please share this episode if you get a chance. You can click there in your app, whatever you're in there. There's usually a little button you down and it says share. Click that share button, and this is a good way to connect with other anglers, help some people out, and help us get more exposure for this podcast. Thanks for advance if you get a chance to share an episode today. Today's episode is sponsored by Range Meal Bars. Each bar is 700 calories and fits easily into the pocket of your backpack, vest, or wherever you need. Range bars are made using only the highest quality gluten-free ingredients, and they are the most convenient and compact way to get out the door and on the river. You can support this podcast and a great local company right now by heading over to wetflyswing.com/range. That's RANGE. Range Meal Bars, a legitimate meal in your pocket. Today's episode is sponsored by Eastern Idaho's Yellowstone Teton Territory, Idaho's most renowned zone for fly fishing, from the Henry's Fork to the South Fork of the Snake and all the high alpine lakes and streams in between. Yellowstone Teton Territory provides anglers and other outdoor enthusiasts with all the information they need to plan their next big trip. You can visit wetflyswing.com/Teton right now to get the full list of outfitters, lodges, fly shops, and all kinds of inspiration to get you started on your next trip to Eastern Idaho. That's Teton, Teton, wetflyswing.com/Teton. Eric Leininger takes us into his background as a guide in Alaska and around the West. We get some good stories. We really go deep into some of that Alaska experience. We find out how the Mega Mend, as I noted at the beginning, came to be. This is a great mend when they're fishing for kings that allowed them to get the fly in position to get many more hookups. We find out how Eric first invented the integrated sinking line in his style, at least out there. We dig into that, so that's pretty interesting. And then we find out about Friday Night Flies, how it's been evolving over time into a pretty good online party right now. We got a bunch of great shout outs and resources in this one. You're going to come out of this with a good all-around background on everything we talk about here, including tiger muskie. We dig into tiger muskie on this one, so it's going to be a fun one. So without further ado, here we go. Eric Leininger from flyfishportland.com. How's it going, Eric?
It's going well, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for coming on here. And I guess there's not really any confusion. Fly Fish Portland, is it always Portland, Oregon, or is it ever Portland, Maine?
It's always Portland, Oregon, staying on the West Coast.
Yeah. So there's no confusion out there. Portland's the fly fishing. So have you ever been out east? Have you ever you done much of that?
A little bit. Years ago, my sister lived out in Providence, Rhode Island, so I'd been out there and out to Boston a few times. Recently out to Vermont last fall. So I've done a little bit of traveling out there, but just haven't done a lot of fishing or anything out there.
Yeah, and you were doing weren't you hitting some other warm water stuff out, redfish, something like that recently? Yeah,
I got a good buddy, Captain Jeff Arnold. I roomed with him for years in Alaska, and I get to go down there, a few times during the year, and we chase redfish and sheepshead and black drum and all sorts of stuff. So, I was just down there last month, and it's always just a good time down there. There's kind of fish everywhere. He's got a really strong program. So
does he? I've heard of him. Yeah.
Yeah. We just, he spends a lot of time scouting out there. So,
right.
I just reap the benefits. I basically just show up and he puts me on fish for however many days I'm there.
Yeah. And where's he at exactly?
So he's out of Hopedale, about an hour outside of New Orleans. And he's been down there for 8 years or so now.
Okay.
So yeah, he guides there basically late March through basically the end of October.
Yeah, end of October. How's the is he, as far as like if you want to put together a trip, maybe a group trip, hosted trip, whatever, is that something? There's the facilities, everything's down there. That's pretty easy to do.
Yeah, 100%. There's a couple options. There's obviously the Dogwood Lodge that Bart runs down there, and it's full service. So if people stay down there, they got room and board and food and guides and the whole 9 yards. You could do a little more dirt bagging it. There's Airbnbs down there and all sorts of stuff. I'm actually hosting a trip there next fall, so we're all pretty excited to get down there.
Nice.
And yeah, there's lots of accommodations. Quite a few people do hosted trips down there. My buddy Brett Wedeking has done a couple down there. He's up in Washington. And it's pretty user friendly, pretty plug and play. Once you find a guide, you just go down there and set up shop for a week and just have a blast.
That's it. Have a good time.
Yeah.
We might see how this goes today if we have some time to dig back into some of your other travels. But I wanted to touch base, like we said, on Portland, kind of more around the Northwest. You've got a couple of species. Sounds like you're doing more warm water stuff. The tiger muskie is pretty interesting. So I think we're going to dig into that today and maybe see how much time we have left to do some other stuff. But take us back quickly just on fly fishing. So how did you first get started in this and take you to how you got into Fly Fish Portland?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely not one of those guys that, grew up fly fishing, been doing it my whole life. I got a way late start. I grew up fishing with dad, bass fishing, high school years, sneaking into golf courses at night. That was a ton of fun, catching just largemouth, running from security, all that fun stuff as a kid. And, jumping some fences at some reservoirs that you'd probably get locked up now, post 9/11 for. But, just did all that. Kind of moved up to Oregon sight unseen. I was bored where I was living, where I grew up, and had a buddy moving up here. So I just kind of just jumped on that and said, "Hey, do you need a roommate?" And moved up here, 20 years ago now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And where'd you come from?
Encinitas. It's like a little surf town.
Oh, yeah.
In Southern California. And it's great. People hear that I moved from there and they're, they can't believe it, but it's just weather. People are like, "Oh, it's so nice down there." And it's like,
I know.
Yeah, I mean, the weather's good, but like there's just not a lot to do. Late teens through 20s. Like you got to make some serious coin to be able to be happy down there. And there's just not a lot of fishing opportunities. You could fish off the beach, and there's plenty of bass fishing, but I just wanted to change, so I came up to Oregon. And I was probably 26. And like a lot of people, went out to Montana fishing with dad. Saw a trout eat a stimulator, switch got flicked, and basically, dropped out of college the next day, even though I was not really all the way in it. I was just kind of going through the paces. And trout fish for a little bit, kind of lost interest in that fairly quickly, and got turned on to Steelhead, and it just kind of spiraled down
Steelhead
from that.
That's it.
I went up to I got invited to go up to Canada by my buddy Justin Barry, who I met at a wedding for about 5 seconds. A friend of a friend is like, "Hey, you should meet, my buddy Justin. He's crazy for Steelhead." And, we talked for about a minute. Ceremony started, things got lost in the shuffle. And then, later that fall, I just get a random call from him, and he's like, "Hey man, this is Justin, how's it going?" And I had no idea who it was. I was like, "Who?" And he's like, "Yeah, Justin from Sarah and Daniel's wedding." And I was like, "Oh yeah, hey man, what's going on?" He's like, "Hey man, do you want to go to the Bulkley?"
Nice.
And I didn't know what it was at that time. I was just like, "What's a Bulkley?" He's like, "Oh, it's badass Steelhead up in Canada." And so, kind of was like, "Okay, I'm down for that." Took a train up there, met him, talked to him for like 5 minutes, like I said prior to that, and just got along real well, and drove out there and was able to spend a couple weeks on the Bulkley and met a bunch of really cool guys. I met Scotty Baker McGarva up there, and just a bunch of kind of guys that are a staple in Canada. This guy Josh Temple, and they're all super nice and super sharing with techniques and just everything about steelhead. So that's kind of how I got into that whole section of steelhead, really.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So the Bulkley, what year was that when you made that first trip up there?
God, I think that was like 2009, so it wasn't that long ago.
Oh, wow.
Less than
2009. That's pretty cool. I love going back because we have hopes to get, do more trips out there, but it's been a while since I've been up. But I think I was actually down there during that year. I think that was one of the first years we went up there. And so we probably crossed paths somewhere along the way. Were you out? It's probably towards the end of September into October.
Yeah, exactly. I think we're there the last week of September and the first week of October. So
there you go. There you go.
Yeah, just right there at Fort Telqua, just everybody being a steelhead bum after their season.
We were doing more of the heading up the Maurice, doing some floats up there.
Oh yeah, yep, yeah. We fished that for a day. That was a cool little river.
Yep.
They're the ones that convinced me to start working in Alaska, actually, because it's just blown away that they were able to guide in that area, and I'm just like, man, how do I get a job up here? And they basically said I couldn't. But they're the ones that kind of planted the seed of Alaska for sure.
Right. So you head up to Alaska. And like, where do you go? What's that look like up there?
Yeah, so everything happened pretty quick, right? I mean, 26, 27, I picked up a fly rod. 3 years later, I'm in Alaska guiding. I ended up at this lodge called Goodnews River Lodge. And I mean, pretty intimidated is the best I could say.
Yeah.
I'd never driven a jet boat. I'd never guided anybody. I totally lied on my resume for that. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, I didn't grow up around guns. So like carrying a shotgun, firing shotgun, that was all new. So all that stuff was brand new. So I was white knuckling it the first year for sure. Definitely put the boat on a couple gravel bars. Definitely blanked during king season a couple days. And I mean, I probably quit like 6 or 7 times in my head that first season.
No kidding.
Oh yeah. It was just, It was so hard. So many days in a row.
What was it? Was it because I mean, some people have. I mean, I've been up there, but I've never done quite that. What's the hardest thing about doing a full season there?
Just mentally staying in it. My first 3 years up there, Alaska was very different. Now it's like 80 degrees and you wear a t-shirt. It's weird.
Oh, right.
The last couple of years were just so hot. I was up there. But yeah, first couple of years, high of 50, low of, 39, raining from, the moment you open your eyes until the moment you go to bed. So just everything's wet. Your hands can start to cramp pretty gnarly and get like little like claws from pulling wet anchor rope, bouncing down the river. I don't work up there anymore, so I could be a little bit more loose with the descriptions. But the clients that go to Alaska, not the greatest. Let's just say that.
Oh, right.
So expectations are out of this world. You talk to them the night before, and hey, what do you guys want to do? Oh, we'd love to catch some kings on the fly. And me being an idiot, my first year, I'm like, oh, sweet, we're going to tear them up. Like, okay, great. I'll see you guys in the morning. No follow-up questions. Yeah. And, they get in the boat and they're like in neoprene waders. It's like, okay, red flag. And then it's like, okay, where's your guys' rods? And they're like, oh, we didn't bring any. It's like, okay, second red flag. And it's just like, okay, well, I'll go grab a couple rods. So I go grab a couple, and they're just kind of looking at them like a foreign object. And that's when it hits. It's like, have you guys done this before? They're like, no, never. It's like, oh my God, I'm
never fished, never fly fished.
Yeah, never fly fished. Or it's like, oh yeah, you get the, we fly fish for 20 years, but it's Alaska for 1 week for the last 20 years. So it's like,
no prep, no casting.
Yeah, no practice. So I'm handing them a 10 weight, with a 400 grain shooting head and a half a chicken, and it's like they're not going to get it. It's going to be a lot of casting practice. So to come kind of full circle, what's the hardest part is it's that. every day for, 10 to 12 hours. You're in the
Wow.
boat for 9 and then, cleaning all the fish and packaging it and getting your boat all clean and getting stuff ready for the next day, and time flies. So yeah, you do like 103 or 105 days in a row. First couple of years, just no day off. And so, yeah, towards the end of the season, you're a shell of a human being. I mean, you're rocked. And, when people come up there, it's a lot of money and they're trying to have, one of the best trips of their life. So it's every day, you just got to turn it on and try to, have these people have, a really good experience. If you're a good guide, that's the difference between a good guides is the ones that can just dig in and make it, it's not fake. It's they really,
they're loving it.
They love being on the water. They love instructing and stuff. So you got to just dig down there and find a way to enjoy that day and to get those people in the fish. So it can wear on you a little bit. That's for sure. There's a lot of screaming into pillows and stuff.
Yeah. Wow. That's
metaphorically,
intense. It almost sounds like I mean, this is getting the extreme, obviously, but like the post-traumatic stress disorder. I've been reading some books on that, right? I mean, obviously, we're joking aside. There's some serious stuff there, but I mean, it sounds pretty intense. Like you literally, you're in that, and it is obviously not easy. But I mean, how long did you stick with the Alaska stuff?
So I did 6 full seasons. So from that's the other thing is people don't realize is a lot of the guys that go up early. You get up to Anchorage maybe at the end of May, and then you fly out to camp maybe the first week of June, and then you're just doing manual labor. I mean, pro tip to any new guide going to Alaska: don't get suckered into going up early,
right?
Because all you're going to do is break your back, basically building a camp. Right. And not get tipped. So if you want to work for $4 an hour, I've got a great option for you. So, it's just stuff that needs to be done. And, doing it that first year, it's pretty cool because you get to see how camps run. But, man, it's pretty gnarly. So, I was never in the armed forces or anything, and it's not even close to what those guys go through. But there is kind of a little bond that happens.
Oh, right.
With the crew up there. We joked around. It's like there's a core crew. It's like the guys that have been there for a long time. So I'd done 6 full seasons at that point. My buddy Jeff had done 12. And then, we got guys like Ross that did 6. My buddy Kyle did 6 or 7. Johnny was up there 6 or 7. He's still up there. Craddy, he's still up there. I think this is like his 9th or 10th season. So a large majority of the guide staff had, 6 or 7 years experience. So that lodge kind of had a golden age where when clients came in, it didn't really matter who you were going with. They knew the system and we could put people on fish. But yeah, that's part of it. Like you get done with your season and it's just like, man, I am not coming back. Like,
right.
I am going to do something different. And then, it starts to kind of, all the hard work and the bad days kind of fade. And, once April starts rolling around, at least in my view of it, it was like, well, I can't leave these dudes to do all this work. Like you got to kind of pull your end. So it's like, okay, like I'm going back in, like you fly up there and it's just like, let's just get through it,
Wow.
Then I did like 3 little short seasons. I forget what Jeff used to call it, but he used to make fun of me saying something. But basically, he'd fly in for silver season, so he'd be there for like a month.
September, something like that.
Yeah, like 5 weeks or something wasn't bad. There's fish everywhere, so it wasn't that bit of a gig. Yeah.
So that's the thing. We've talked a little bit about this recently, talked to Brian O'Keefe back, and just that whole thing on, salmon in Alaska. You got coho, you got Chinook, you got other fish. But so what is the difference for you, coho versus Chinook?
So on our river, the Goodnews River, I don't know how it is now, but I would say more often than not in August, it would just get real stupid. I mean, there'd be so many fish around. You're only maybe 6 miles up from the bay. So They're all
Yeah.
obviously wild. They're coming in hot and, bright.
Yeah. Is that the good news? Is that take us on? Is that the good news, or is that like that's Kuskokwim area, right? Or is that north?
It's called the Kuskokwim drainage, but we're pretty far from that actually. But yeah, that is, Goodnews River dumping into Goodnews Bay there.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Southwest Alaska.
Yep.
I mean, they just literally eat anything. I mean, and I do mean anything. I had a guy, David Harris, he used to bring up his whole tackle box full of bass lures, and he'd catch them on spinner baits and plugs and Texas rig worms. And I mean, we'd spray paint cigarette butts pink and cover them in aqua seal and, thread a hook through them and like skitter them on top. They'd eat that. They eat bass poppers. I mean, they eat Zara spooks. So, you're going to catch fish. That's the thing is coho season is, even if you can't hit your ass with both hands, if you can get the fly in the water. I mean, I can't tell you how many fish were caught after they released it. The fly's just hanging off the back of the boat, and fish just comes up and smashes it. So,
boom.
Yeah, that's part of the problem because people are like, hey, everybody, look how good of a fisherman I am. And it's like, no, anybody can do this. So, they come back for king season and it's all of a sudden realities come knocking at the door. They're deep. They're just not as aggressive as coho. You got to get it in their face and you got to drill them when they eat. You let them eat it just like a steelhead, but you got to cross their eyes because they just are really hard to stay stuck. So
gotcha.
Just having, accurate expectations can make or break your day for sure. But our river is a little bit deeper. There were spots to throw a two-hander, but most of the fishing was with a single hand out of the boat.
Oh, okay. Yeah, mostly single. Yeah, out of the boat. So you're just kind of like anchored up, swinging through deep runs.
Yeah, exactly. And, if you're a moderate angler, like if you could throw a full shooting head and a, some type of intruder, whatever, the fly didn't really matter. If you could throw it 40 feet, 50 feet, and you got control of your swing, you'd probably hook 10 or 15 fish a day.
Oh, so you would, Chinook.
Yeah. It can be really good. I saw some pretty epic days.
Right. Yeah.
But
that is the thing. Yeah.
The best thing that Alaska did for me is just a quick story is I did all like the social media stuff for them for 4 or 5 years.
That's the Goodnews River Lodge.
Yep. So I ran their Instagram and I built one of their websites, not the current one that they use, but I just would take photos and video and just run that side of things for quite a few years. And one day I just had the drone up during king season and there's fish rolling kind of everywhere, but we didn't really destroy them. And I had 2 really good anglers. And it's just like weird, like they're off the bite. You hear all these weird things. People say, oh, they're off the bite or, full moon or, pick your excuse why they're not eating. Right. So later that night, I'm reviewing the footage on my laptop and I could see the fly. People would cast it, kind of 70 degrees down. They do this shitty little trout mend or whatever.
Yeah.
And as that swing's coming through, the Skagit or whatever they're, if they're fishing a single hand, is pointed kind of 45, but the sink tip is curled a little bit and the fly is damn near upriver. So they think their fly's in one spot, but it's not. And what happens is that fly accelerates downriver and then makes this quick turn at the bottom. And you could see Chinook heads turn when it fly by it. Like they'd see it, but they're like, Frank, what the fuck was that?
Yeah,
like,
right. What was that?
What went by us, and so I'm like, holy shit, like the fly's not coming across slow enough. Like it's not where we think it's at. Yeah. And at this point, I've been guiding winter steelhead for a while. And, I think this is like my 5th year in Alaska. Like I thought I was like hot shit. Like, oh yeah, I know what I'm doing. Wrong. Like completely wrong. So I get out there the next day. I got 2 good anglers. We're set up kind of in the same spot. And it's like same shit. Like fish are rolling. We hooked one, 3rd cast or whatever. And then it kind of went dead for 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And, you know, they're accomplished anglers, like I said, so they're doing their own thing. I'm going to swap flies, Eric. I'm like, okay, I'm going to change this tip out a little bit heavier. It's like, okay, nothing's working. And so, you know, I start telling them about the drone footage, and I'm like, guys, I don't think we're like straightening the fly out with that little mend. I think it's coming in sideways and it's accelerating past these fish. And they're like, well, what do you want me to do? I'm like, you gotta mend it more. They're like, all right. So they throw it out and they do like just the bare minimum mend. And I was like, I don't think that's gonna take. They're like, okay. I'm like, you know, mend it more. They throw it out again. They do a little bit more like that. I'm like, no, like more. So this went on for about 20 minutes. You know, they do a little bit more of a mend, and I'd be like, no, that's not right. And I don't know what's right.
Sure.
At this point, I'm just telling them, hey, I don't think that's the goal.
Yep.
So we're kind of like figuring the shit out between the three of us in the boat. And, you know, I'm like, I think you need to like actually lift that. And they're throwing a spay rod. I'm like, you need to lift that rod up and actually pull that rod way upriver, because mending that, you know, that sink tip it doesn't work. You know, if you've ever tried to mend a sink tip, it does its job. As soon as it hits the water, it's underwater. You're not going to mend it. So you actually got to straighten it out, you know, physically with the rod. So we're going back and forth with that for longer, and they're getting frustrated, and I'm getting frustrated because it's not doing what I want it to do, and they don't really understand what I'm trying to do, and I don't really either. This is all like it happening in real time. And so Mark was at the bow, and he's just hands me the rod. He's like, I think you just need to show us what's going on. And, you know, again, I was like, I don't even really know, Mark. I don't know. So I throw it out, and I kind of do the same mend. And I'm like, okay, that's not it. I don't let it swing, strip the running line in, make another cast, a little bit bigger mend, maybe 3 or 4 of those. And finally just kind of go for broke. And I throw it out, and I just lift the rod up and just yank on that thing way upriver. And I watch the Skagit, sink tip, and fly kind of turn that corner, come in a straight line, and skitter to the top actually of the water. But you can visually see all that in a straight line. And I'm like, okay, that's what I want. And they're like, but you move the fly so much, you know, away from the zone. Okay. And so it's like, okay, well, we got to compensate for that. So now I threw, you know, 20 feet past where those fish are rolling, did this huge mend. It kind of came in line where I thought they were at. I dropped the rod tip to create slack, and I'm just a counter by nature. And so it was like a 10-second free fall until that fly came tight. And when it came tight, I knew it was just right there. It wasn't going downriver anymore. It just sank the whole time. It came tight. The line's super straight. So now it's coming across that, like, just crawling. And that fly came tight and maybe swung for 1 second, and a fish just climbs on. And so I'm not reacting. And, you know, Mark and Phil are looking, and they're like, oh, okay, like we can do that. Like I get your, like, I visually saw what you're trying to accomplish. And I said, great, now reel this fish in. And I handed the rod to Mark, and his eyes, I still remember, they got so big, you know. He's just like, you know, we're out here like casting for 45 minutes, Phil. Like, this kid takes one cast, hooks a fish. And so after seeing that became a big part of my program up there, and it was night and day. I mean, we started railing fish.
Okay.
And so when I got back to Oregon and, you know, got into my fall, you know, summer steelhead, I didn't really think about it. But once old Mr. Winter came through, and I was fishing runs where I knew there was fish in, like, we've caught a bunch in this run, or it's like the best run on the river. It's mid-February. Like, you just know there's fish there. I started working with my guys, and it kind of became what they call now as the mega mend. And when I started doing it myself, I was catching fish behind my buddies in the same run. So I knew there was something to it. So I think that's the best thing that came out of that. Yeah. Those nine summers in AK is like this really good tool that 100% guarantee works.
Right. For salmon and steelhead.
Yeah. For any fish that, you know, for any fish that's deep, really, and that you're swinging flies to. That could be, big trout or anadromous fish or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I won't get into the whole construction of sink tips. That's maybe something else, but I built my own custom tips for that procedure specifically. And I gave a couple to people, and then, long story short, somebody gave one to Simon, and they made them from Rio, and they ripped my idea off. But whatever.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Right. So what is that like? So well, I guess we don't want to promote it, but yeah. So basically, that idea is out. I mean, so what this was? Yeah, this is kind of recent years. So that there's plenty of steelhead Skagit lines out there and tips.
Yeah, I mean, Brian Silvey came up with the F.I.S.T line.
Yeah. Oh, that was Silvey. Yeah.
Yeah, which is that floating intermediate sink 3, which is still probably one of the best, winter steelhead lines out there.
Yeah.
So I just took that model and built a sink tip that went from T8 to T11 to T14. So my entire setup is at a steady decline from the back end of my Skagit. That's a floater. It goes floating intermediate, sink 3, T8, T11, T14. And so with that mega mend, you have that heaviest part at the very back end at the tip, and it just drags everything else down. The other bonus is as it comes in on the swing, it's at such a decline that you don't hook all those big boulders like you do with a level piece of like T11, because it's not just scraping the whole bottom. It's just the very end of it is at the deepest part, and then it kind of gradually comes up. Yeah, it's not very fun to cast, but I mean, do you want to catch that winter steelhead or not? Because this is a really good tip. So
gotcha. So it's kind of the floating intermediate sink tip is the that's airflow.
Yeah, so that was a line made by Airflow, and then Simon came in the shop, and I was like, hey man, like whose idea was these sink tips? It's multi-density sink tips, and he's like, oh yeah, like somebody gave me a sink tip last winter on the Clackamas, and I'm like, was it multicolored, like maroon, green, and then blue? He's like, yeah. I'm like, that's my idea. And he's like, no. And Jack, at the shop, he's like, yeah, it's like, there's no bad blood, right? There's no money in fly fishing, so it doesn't matter anyways. But just the fact that I had given it to somebody and then they gave it to Simon, and, it's my fault because I'm like, oh, and then you guys made it. He's like, well, why don't you just send it to us and we would have made it? It's like, well, yeah, I guess I am an idiot because that's literally all it would have taken, right?
I know that's the thing. I don't know the whole line, space, right? But it seems like Simon and these people that are out there running the show, or at least on that side of it, are pretty cool people, right? It seems like that would be something they could dial in.
Yeah, 100%. Like I said, there's absolutely no bad blood.
Yeah.
I haven't met really anybody in the fishing industry that I don't like.
No, exactly.
I kind of joke around like, hey, if you fly fish or gear fish or whatever, we're probably going to get along just fine. Yep. I do wish they would have made the sink tip with their color coordinated sections, because the whole thing's black. And so you can't tell like where's the taper, like what sections are in there. So that's the only thing I wish they would have done. But
so that's similar to, like you said, so the F.I.S.T is the float. It goes from floating intermediate to sink tip. And then this is the similar thing where it's kind of light down to the heavy at the very tip where the fly is, the heavier the T14.
Yeah, people get confused. They're like, so I attach the T14 to the Skagit head. It's like,
yeah, you might think that too, right? Because the heavier sinks first, then it gets lighter and later, and it comes up in the zone for the fish, right? Instead of laying on the bottom. But no,
but it's actually reversed. Yeah, so that was the holdup why they didn't really want to make it, because they kept saying like, oh, because there's too much mass at the end of a Skagit head to turn over, and then to go to a skinny T8. So now you've got me on a tangent, because this is just this is a tiny bone I got to pick. I won't say who it was with, but they kept telling me, hey, that's not going to work because the diameters don't add up. And I'm telling them, you're basing this off of sitting behind a desk, and I'm out there casting it. I'm telling you it works. And they're just like, no. And I never got that. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I'm out there. I'm telling you it works. I do it. My clients do it. We're catching more fish. Make it. They're like, nah, the diameters don't add up. And it's like, God, man, pencil pushers. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Cool. Well, this is good. I love, we're kind of on a good roll here, because there's, what I mean? This is, I'm heading out steelheading to an area that I've never been over out in Ohio here soon. And
Oh, cool.
yeah, we're going to be fishing some narrow, small rivers, and I've never really dialed in, you know what I mean, the swinging on smaller rivers. So I'm kind of excited to see how, we're doing some stuff with Jeff Liskay out there, and obviously he's got stuff dialed. So it's going to be cool to see, you know what I mean, to see everybody how that all works out. But I'm sure it's a similar deal.
Yeah, I'm super jealous of the Midwest guys. They get so many fish out there. One of my good buddies, Drew Rosema, he guides out out of Grand Rapids, Michigan I think he's still working for Kevin Feenstra, but
oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like, we're always joking around with like, lake run rainbows and all that stuff. And it's like, dude, they get so many fish. It's like,
I know.
If they get upset that people say lake run rainbows, it's like, you guys have so many fish. I would just be shoving that into anybody on the West Coast's face. I mean, the amount of fish they get in their rivers is ridiculous.
Yep.
So if they're coming from a lake, they could come from outer space. I don't care. I mean, that many fish to be able to swing flies to, it's awesome. I'm super jealous. So
yeah, definitely the thing. Well, and just like it's actually not that much. We've been looking at the rain or the weather, thinking like, well, God, is it going to get too cold out there? And it still might. You never know. But I mean, God, the temps are the same as here. I mean, Oregon, that's the Midwest, it's exact same temperature right now.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, 52 and whatever, low of freezing, in that range is definitely cold. But if it gets up into the 50s, I mean, that's pretty decent.
Yeah, I'd take that.
Yeah, totally. I just want to note a couple, we've Steelhead episodes. We've got a bunch of them today. We're not going to dig. Well, and again, this is a good example of a good episode because whatever we started, it's 30 minutes in and we're still chit-chatting. That's a good sign. You know what I mean? But
yeah, totally.
So Kevin Feenstra, way back in episode 13 when we first started the podcast, we had him on. I'll put a link out to that. And then you made me remind me of Rob Crandall, episode 62. He's kind of out all over Oregon and stuff, and he had a really cool episode where he talked about one of the first times somebody talked about that, what you said about getting that fly to the right depth and how he does it, right? And it's the same thing, like using those mends to get it set up so by the time it's at the fish, it's not ripping across its face. It's actually kind of going right there where you can't refuse it, right? Is that kind of how it feels like for you?
Yeah. I mean, you'll hear in any podcast, book, DVD, or whatever, people over and over talk about presentation, right? And for years, that would kind of just go over my head. I heard what they're saying. I'm reading the words. I understand what they mean, but I didn't really get it. And it's so important. And that's all that is setting your fly up. When you're summer fishing, it's not even really a thing. It's just 45 down. That thing should start swinging as soon as it hits the water. It's not going to get deep. It's going to be a couple inches, maybe a foot if you're lucky, underneath the surface. So, there's no setup required. It's just quarter down, go to work, cover water. There's runs that I know it's 10 or 12 feet deep, like on the Clackamas. It's no secret. Well, here's a big tip for anybody fishing Oregon. Specifically the Clackamas. There's a run called Dead Horse. Everybody knows it. It's probably one of the best runs on the river. There's a secondary bucket. Everybody catches fish on the inside if you're first person through, but there is a secondary bucket that's about 100 feet out, and it's like 10 feet deep. There's a big ledge chunk out there, and it drops off right behind it, and fish sit behind that, but they never see flies because people don't cast 100 feet, and if they do, their flies ripping through there. So with that setup, I've got like a 10-second free fall. I do the math at the sink rate. The fly's like down like almost 7 feet, which is a crazy amount for a sink tip to get a fly. And if you get it right out there and you do a big mega mend and that thing comes tight way out in the middle, more times than not, you get drilled within the first couple seconds of the swing. So it's just a really effective way to, show your fly to fish that haven't seen the program.
Right, that's cool. So, and on that mega man, just going back to that, so it's if you were fishing, making the long cast, so you're like on that example, you're trying to cast, say, 20 feet past where you want that fly to get, and then you kind of make mega man that brings in 20 feet or something like that to drop into the zone. Is that kind of the length? Yeah,
exactly. And I mean, again, not to turn this into a Steelhead podcast, but if you start counting like that every run, and really try to get it as deep as you can. Eventually, most of the runs you're gonna hang up on bottom, or you're going to feel it tick bottom. Well, you could back off that mega men, maybe only throw it 10 feet past your target. And basically what you can do is by counting, how many seconds it takes to be maybe a foot off the bottom or 2 feet off the bottom or right on the bottom at every run on your local river and at different levels. So when the clack's at like 12.5, I know that I can get away with like an 8-second free fall and dead horse, and I'll be like a foot off the bottom, which is where I want to be in the wintertime. But I know at like 13.5, like I will fish the inside with like T8, and then I'll go through again, or have my guy in the back go through, and he needs to get 10 seconds to get down because there's more water. Now that 6-foot drop isn't good. It needs to be almost 8 feet down. So it's kind of nerdy, but it's simple math. But if you know that, when you go through every run, I'll kind of mess with my guys, and, they'll be fishing. I'll be like, hey, how deep do you think your fly is right now? They're just like, I don't know, 2 feet. Like they have no idea.
Yeah, no.
And with that way, you can be like, oh yeah, like if you ask me fishing any run, how do you think deep do you think your fly is? I know. I'm like, oh, right now it's at like 4 feet.
Right.
So that takes a lot of the guesswork out.
Yeah. Remind us again on that tip on knowing exactly, depending on the run, it could be a 4 foot or like a 8 foot bucket. How do you know exactly what depth you're at?
Yeah, so like a lot of the guys aren't going to be fishing that multi-density tip, so that's fine. So take like T11. Like if you had to fish one sink tip, at least in Oregon around our rivers, it'd be like 12.5 feet at T11, which has like a 5 to 6 second sink rate, right? So let's take the back end because, devil's advocate. So, 5 inches a second. So at 10 seconds, you're down 50 inches. So, you're down about 4 feet, right? If you fish T14, right, that's a kind of a 6 to 7 or sometimes even a 7 to 8. So call it 7. Well, at 10 seconds, you're 70 inches down. So, you're almost 6 feet down. So just by doing that basic math, you can kind of know
just
how deep you are. Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. Cool. Well, this is, I'm glad we went down that track because the Alaska thing is interesting because especially for people, if you haven't been up there, it's a good lesson for people that are going or that are going to be guides up there, right? It's a whole different world, but you were able to get down into, and make the transition. So is that kind of what, these days you're doing a little bit of everything and you've got the flight, right? The Friday night flies and all sorts of stuff. Talk about that. What keeps you busy these days?
Yeah, just busy. I'm like one of those guys that always, complains like, oh man, like I wish I had a day off, but then I have a day off and I hate it. I'm just like, what am I going to do? Like I got to have a project. So yeah, just staying pretty busy. The Friday night flies thing that came out of just, we're doing some at the shop in 2019, just like any shop does a fly tying night. COVID hit, everybody's at home. I kind of continued to do them at home, but like my heart just wasn't in it. I'm like, what is going on in the world? Everything's messed up. I can't work. Like I can't fish. They closed like the boat ramps. So I just got mad. I got mad and I was frustrated and I just fucking let it all hang out. I just drink like a bottle of wine and just scream into that phone. And to my surprise, people are like, yeah. Right. I get it. Give me some of that. So it kind of grew pretty quick. And that's basically what it's turned into is very little fly tying. Just kind of an airing of grievances is what it basically is now. And, we got probably 40, 50 people, sometimes more that join in.
Oh, wow. And everybody's just kind of hanging, just chat.
Everybody's
so it's like you're at the shop, right? Like late at the shop, drinking some beers or whatever, and hanging, and yeah. I think
it just works so well because a lot of people, I think, are like me. You get done with your work or you get done with your day. I don't want to drive to a fly shop. Yeah. I don't want to drive anywhere. I just want to be home with my dogs or my people or whatever, And it's like it's so nice, technology. It's like use it. It's like just fire up the iPad and or, your phone or whatever, and see some insane person scream at it for like an hour, sometimes related about fishing. And it's like, oh, this is great. Like, okay. And then I get on with my day. Yeah.
So how do we track this down? So what's the list or follow this?
Well, if you go to my Instagram, which is just Mike Giza, or the shop that I work for is Northwest Fly Fishing Outfitters here in Portland. They're on Instagram just as NWFFO, just on Instagram. They're all archived on the shop's Instagram, so you can go back and watch a bunch if you want.
Oh, cool.
I know some guys watch it the following morning, like, wake up early, have coffee before the kids come up, and fire on an episode of Fry on Flies.
When does it go live? When do you guys record?
So we every Friday at 7.
Yeah,
I should know. It's like 3 years.
Gotcha. In that good range. Yeah.
We haven't started it up. We always take like the summers off just because everybody's so busy and being outside and all that stuff. We usually start back up sometime in November. I think we're starting the first Friday of December. We're gonna fire it back up. It's cool. Sometimes my buddy Colby comes over. And he's on there. He's like, we're like the odd couple, because he's like, anybody that meets Colby's like, oh man, he's so nice. Like, he's such a good dude.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to be friends with him. That's not me. I'm just like, fuck everybody. I hate everything. And so having him there, it's pretty funny because I just get going, and he's always there to be like, oh, but here's the positive side of it. And I'm just like, shut the hell up, Colby.
Yeah.
He loves trout fishing. I hate it. So it's like, we got a good dichotomy going, and he is a good dude. So we have a lot of fun.
Nice. Cool. We'll put a link out to the Friday Night Flies. We'll get some of that so we check that out. And
fair warning. Don't have your kids around.
Yeah.
Put the earmuffs on. It's
no
not
kids.
Family. Well, it's funny. I got a DM from this gal Surf Art that's on Instagram. She's awesome. And apparently she watches it with her family at night, like around the dinner table. And I'm like, even like, how old are your kids? And they're like teenagers. I was like, all right. Like, she's like, oh, it's fucking great. They've heard that
there you
before.
Go. Yeah.
So yeah, it takes all sorts.
You got your people. That's the cool thing about it, right? You got to find your crew, and there's going to be lots of people that probably aren't into it, but it's better to find the crew that really loves it, because that's the power in finding the smaller group as opposed to trying to reach everybody, right? Totally.
Like, we're not trying to put on any airs or anything. I've had a couple people make comments, on the page or whatever that, you're, it's not a good look to be cursing like this or this or that. And I can't even respond quick enough. It's just like, there'll be like 30 people that watch the show, just like jump them. I'm like, easy guys, easy.
Right.
They're just voicing their opinion. So
I know.
It's, we don't take it very seriously, but we just try to have fun with it.
Today's episode is sponsored by Zag.Fish, who was founded with the idea of finding ethical solutions to fly tying products and services. They've done just that by creating jobs for marginalized people, both in the U.S. and abroad. They've got everything covered. We've had a recent episode on with John Grosta, who talked about some of the great products they have with the fishing he does in Florida. With the Fairflies brushes. They've got the 5D brushes and their fly fur, which is pretty amazing. Tons of people are loving this stuff for its durability and the speed that allows you to tie flies. John talked about that on the podcast, and he said that just basically it's going to add on at least 15 to 20 minutes to each fly you tie if you're not using these brushes. Zag also has Wasatch custom angling tools in their satchel with over 50 custom heirloom tools that go along with your materials. So they are a true do-it-yourself company, and you got to check out Zag.Fish right now. If you want to, you can head over to wetflyswing.com/Zag, and you can get 20% off your first order by clicking through that link, and let them know you heard of them through this podcast, and you'll get that 20% discount right now. That's wetflyswing.com/Zag, Z-A-G. Okay, back to the show. Well, this has been fun. I think I want to just touch, dig into a little bit on, we're hoping to dig into, I was thinking tiger muskie was one species that's, definitely a little bit different than steelhead, and actually kind of similar in some ways. But start us there, because you've got these other species you've been focusing on recently, including some of the warm water stuff. What's, just take us there. So the tiger muskie versus steelhead, which one's harder to catch?
God, that's tough. I this day and age, I'd probably say steelhead, and that's just based off of numbers. Yeah. I always tell people steelhead are by far the easiest fish to catch on the planet. I mean, there is no other fish that's easier. I think bluegill are harder to catch than steelhead. There's just not a lot of them around.
And are you talking winter steelhead, summer steelhead, or just any steelhead?
Any steelhead. They are so stupid. Like, everybody gives them so much credit. And look, they're great. They're the majestic steelhead. They're, you can't say anything bad about them. They are dumb as a rock. I mean, they go in a river. They're not there to feed, right? We huck some type of colored feather. We don't put any action on it. It just comes across the water column and they crush it. Like, what? Why?
Right.
So,
and muskie isn't that way.
And muskie are the total opposite. It's like they are apex predators. When they decide to eat something, it dies. End of story. That's it. I mean, so, you can drag flies right in front of their face. And if they're not in the mood, you can hit them in the head with it sometimes. They'll follow your flies all the way to the boat. They'll follow it around in a big oval. I don't find the tiger muskies like a figure eight, but they will eat on like a big oval. They're just a badass fish. And when they decide to eat your fly, I mean, your heart's going into your throat. They absolutely smoke that thing. I mean, you'll have the occasional one that comes up and just, just kind of mouths just a big black fly for whatever reason. I'm not really interested in those fish. I like the ones that you don't really see and they just come out of nowhere and just crush. So shout out Mike Sturza. He's for whatever reason been super nice to me and shared quite a few little tips and tricks. And he's been chasing tiger muskies longer than anybody I think I know in the Pacific Northwest. So, if you want to catch one, book Mike Sturza. If you want to see them and maybe catch one, then you can book me. But he's just got it dialed. He runs Lost Coast Outfitters out of he's near the Cowlitz. I forget what town he's in, but
okay, yeah, I know. I think I've connected with him. I know the name Sturza. Okay, yeah,
he's a badass. He's
cool.
Yeah,
cool. Yeah. We'll put a link out to that. So that's So we'll, on that, I mean, I guess where are the right? Because all these steelhead rivers are all around us. We're in Washington, Oregon, the Northwest. Are you finding tiger muskie?
Yeah, there's rumors that they stocked one in Oregon. I don't know. It's too far for me. But yeah, there's like 5 or 6 in Washington. There's Mayfield, Merwin, Taps, I think Newman, maybe Silver. There's a couple that go kind of up into northeastern Washington that I don't mess around with. But
and these are names of
reservoirs, lakes. But yeah, my buddy Brett Wedeking invited me out years ago. And I mean, when I saw my first fish, I immediately just started saving up for a powerboat that day. I mean, it was just a lot of things in my life happened like that. Pretty hard, addictive personality. So it really get the horse blinders on, laser focus type of stuff happens for good, for bad, or otherwise. And so within the next year I had a boat and I was just going out any day that I wasn't guiding and basically running a trolling motor, just going around the lake and throwing flies. And I probably spent $50,000 on materials trying to learn how to tie game changers and big double nickels and stuff. And I mean, thank God I didn't know what I know now, because so much money in wasted flies and hooks, just trying to figure out the taper and figure out what these fish want to eat. For years, I was just like, they're just impossible. I can't crack the code. And then you start, doing different stuff, and all of a sudden patterns start coming together and they start eating it. And it feels pretty good when you go out there and you're pretty confident in your gear and your flies and you start making it happen. So like last spring, I fished basically 2 months, May and June, hardcore for them. And we had 28 fish eat the fly. So,
oh, wow.
That was pretty good.
That sounds pretty. So what allowed you to crack the code? What was the biggest thing? Just the fly?
Yeah, I mean, I hate to give out the secret, but
Yeah. There's nobody
if,
listening. This is
yeah,
we're all...
yeah, right. It's one of those things. I feel like when tires, like, I don't know, maybe back in the day, Larry Dahlberg, but definitely
Yeah.
now, like Will and Blaine,
Yeah.
Schultz. I feel like when they come out with a fly, they're like, they still fish it, but they're already on to like the next one that
Right.
that you don't know about. Um, because they're just always evolving with these patterns. So there's a fly called the jerk changer that Blaine started tying like a year or two ago. There's no tying video for it. I just hit him up through DM and he sent me the recipe. I'm sure he's done it to other people because I see him on the gram now. And that fly is the best moving fly on the planet. Nothing can touch it. If you tie it right and taper it, trim it, it's like I've seen it do a 360. The thing's nuts. And they crushed that thing. I mean, the most aggressive takes ever. And then again, just working, alongside Sturza, he kind of gave me that one. I won't let out of the bag, but he fishes a fly that all those fish that are like laid up that I can never get to trigger, they eat this certain fly. Why? I don't know, but they do. But the jerk changer for sure was something that, I mean, they were just crushing that fly.
Yeah, nice. And we might not be able to find a video, but I always like to find some stuff to put in the show notes if we can track something down there. Do you guys tie? Have you on your channel? I know you have a few tying videos right in there.
Yeah, I mean, I'll do some tying video. I did some tying videos for Loomis that are on their website.
Oh yeah.
I used to do more tying videos. Man, shout out to all the people that do it because they are a pain in the butt. I mean, the editing. Well, you do the show and all that. The editing in the background is so tedious, and like, I feel lucky. I just don't have the time anymore. I mean, I'm kind of as busy as I want to be as far as the guiding thing goes now. So I just tie for fun. I love tying flies still. I probably tie for at least an hour or two every day. When I get rained out or I'm off the water, I'll tie for 7 or 8 hours. I love it. Like I'm going to Mexico this Friday to go bass fishing. I'm probably bringing 300 flies. I mean, I just can't stop tying for down there. I have way more than I'm going to need. I mean, it's out of hand.
Yeah, you love it. You love tying. That's cool to hear. What's the bass? What are you guys heading out for?
We're going down to this lake called El Salto. It's just they have huge largemouth down there. Just a bunch of us are going down there. Danny from Dirty Water Flies, he basically hosts a trip out there every year. So shout out to Danny. He's the one that told me about it. Really looking forward to getting out there. But all the warm water stuff it's been really cool. Just totally, got my eyes opened up to that world. When I went to the Midwest, again, shout out Chris Willen. I mean, that dude, not only is he freaking hilarious, maybe one of the funniest people alive, he's so fucking fishy. It's insane. Like,
this is Chris. What was the last name?
Chris Willen. He's out of Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And the dude is just a fish magnet. And then of course, Schultz. I mean, if people aren't paying attention to what Mike Schultz and that whole crew is doing, you're living under a rock. I mean, their team is so badass. Like those dudes just crank out new flies, just constantly pushing the limit, and created a bass fishery where there wasn't one. So, I mean, spoiler alert, I just took his motto and just slam dunked it over here. I mean, people are like, man, like, how are you figuring all this stuff out? I'm like, I'm not. I just took what those guys do and said, hey, that's cool. I'm going to take that, and then I'm just going to do it over here. And they're like,
that's so cool. You know what's amazing about that is that there's been this, I think it's all a fun, positive thing, but occasionally you hear these jokes about, the Midwest versus the Steelhead, of course, because it's like, the Steelhead from the north or from the West went out to the Midwest. And then there's this thing like, oh, is it Steelhead or whatever? But it's so funny that you're doing that because, I mean, they basically took some of our, the Skagit, some of that stuff. Totally. We're doing out here, same deal. And it really doesn't really matter. It's whatever works.
Yeah. I mean, I was out there and it's like, it's 80 degrees, 90 degrees and fish are crushing. And it's like, I'm just like having this like, God, you are so like, I have moments, I could take up a whole podcast with things I call, wow, I am stupid. Because there are some thoughts and stuff I've said in my life where it's like, I'm surprised I can walk down the street because
yeah.
just complete idiot. So yeah, I mean, every summer that once I stopped going to Alaska, it's like 100 degrees now in Oregon. I mean, it is hot
110,
here.
120 sometimes. Almost.
Yeah. Like June through September. And it's like, yeah, you know, it hates hot heat, steelhead and also trout. But then people are just like forcing it all spring and summer. They're out there, you know, at 3:30 on the Deschutes, you know, chasing steelhead till like 7:30. And then it's like, well, the sun's up. So we'll just take a 6-hour nap or we'll throw tips. And it's like, meanwhile, there's like huge smallmouth bass, carp, tiger muskie that are just annihilating anything that comes in their path, and nobody's fishing for them. So it's just like, what are you doing? Yeah, go fish for those fish. And so I basically started with, you know, Jack, the owner of the shop. Colby's out there with me, and a couple really good clients that, you know, I've taken fishing for a while that I'm like, hey, I'm doing some of this new shit. Do you guys want to try it? And they're like, yeah. And now it's just taken off. And it's really nice, you know, like I said, compliments from clients and friends and stuff. They're like, wow, that's awesome. You're really, you know, doing something different and figuring it out. It's like, I'm not. Don't give me any credit. I'm not doing anything. I literally stole these guys' program from the Midwest.
Right. Blaine's doing the muskie, the flat, everything.
And Chris and, you know, Willen. I could probably show you 400, you know, pages of DMs from me to Willen just asking him questions about muskies for the last 4 years, or Schultz about, you know, bass and where they're at and why they're doing this. And they're just open books. And so, yeah, I didn't figure anything out. I just looked at people that killed it and went, hey, how do you do that? And they're like, oh, like this. And I'm like, okay, thanks. And then just started doing that.
So well, I mean, that's always the way it is though, right? It's never some new thing, you know, even look at like business or products, right? It's not like the iPhone was the first phone ever.
Sure. Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
They just tweaked what the old, well, whatever it was, right? The thing that the BlackBerry or whatever it was, right?
Yeah.
They're like, this thing sucks.
And now it's like, those are great programs. And what's really cool is all the guys have been taking steelhead fishing for the last 10 or 12 years. Now we have all these different species to chase when it gets hot. And I mean, like the carp thing, I cannot believe how that thing has taken off. I mean, probably one of my favorite fish to chase now. I just, the whole sight fishing thing, there's a million of them. The water's crystal clear. You know, it's just, they're big. You know, we catch fish over 20 pounds every season. And it's just, you know, it's crazy because people come into the shop and, you know, oh, you've been fishing or whatever. It's like last summer, it's like, oh yeah, you know, just guiding carp. And some guys are so grossed out and just like, they're like, what? And
that's
I'm
funny.
Like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, you know, I'm showing them photos and stuff. And they're like, oh, they're like, I might do that one day. I'm like, oh yeah, you can't, you know? And they're like, you know, what do you mean I can't? I'm like, sold out the rest of the summer. They're like, what? I'm like, yeah, it's sold out. They're like, well, maybe I'll go out with you next year. I'm like, it's sold out. They're like, next summer, like 2023. I'm like, yeah, the whole summer's sold out. And all of a sudden they're just like looking like, what? Like, so
that's cool.
It's the only fishery that 100% return rate the last 3 years. So 3 years ago is my first year. 100% of those people took the same day for the next summer. Whatever days I had open, filled, and all those people booked for the following summer. So
that's amazing.
It's just really cool. It's a short window, you know. It's got to be hot, but it's
got to be hot.
Something fun to do. Yeah.
This is cool. Well, let's take it back. And then the carp is awesome, and bass as well. We've touched on all these species, and the muskie, but I'm interested in taking us back there. So you mentioned a few lakes that people could check out. What else? Sounds like a boat is important. I mean, could you go up there with any type of boat, or do you have to have it sounds like you picked up a new boat for the fishing?
Yeah. The problem with these fisheries, the bass fishing, not so much, but like tiger muskie, like, yeah, you're going to need a boat. And then you got to have somebody run it, because I've tried to run the trolling motor and fish for muskie. It's a nightmare. I mean, you can make it work, but it's not great. So if you got a buddy that can run a trolling motor and you guys can switch back and forth, that's your best bet. But I know guys that go out like with drift boats with a little motor on it. I know insane people that go out in float tubes with their legs dangling.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if I would do that. But being elevated in a boat is really key. I have a little bit of an advantage because my boat has a poling platform built on it. So
what type of boat is it?
It's just a Yamaha G3. It's basically a John boat. It's a 1756.
John boat.
It's a center console, but I had a poling platform built on it for poling the Columbia for carp. So it's just like, you see the guys chasing redfish or bonefish. It's that setup. So when we're looking for tigers, I stand up there too. So I'm just like running a trolling motor like 12 feet in the air. So I can see a long distance away, which allows us to kind of creep up on some of those fish because they really like to be in wood, especially early season. So it gives you a little bit of advantage. So yeah, you want a boat. So that's kind of the downside, but and then just fly construction. Like you're going to have to tie your own because no one sells them in Oregon or Washington. You could probably get some online from some online tires. But then again, the stuff that works for like real muskie doesn't necessarily work for tiger muskie. There are some crossover stuff, but they don't like the really, really, really big shit over here. At least what I found. And then you're going to have some pretty serious gear. We throw the Loomis IMX Pro 11 weight. It's a Musky rod. It was designed by Chris Willen. It's a serious stick.
It's stiff.
Yeah, it's just a big rod.
Weight.
You can fish it all day, but it's really about the stopping power. Most of the fish that we catch, they're not hooked real great. So when they eat the fly, it's like you gotta not let them take any line and just kind of reef them into the net, which is full hand-to-hand combat. Yeah.
No kidding. So they hook up, and how long when they hook up to getting to the net does it take?
As fast as possible, but and sometimes you get lucky. You get some strong dudes in your boat, and they know what I mean by like stand that fish on its head. It tries to go, and if you pull back hard enough, they'll actually do like a little bit of a handstand, and as they come up, you can get the net on them. But sometimes you just get some big fish. My buddy Kendrick hooked a toad, and I mean, we saw it happen right at boatside. It crushed it, and there was nothing he could do. It had room to go, and it just went straight to the bottom of the lake, like 40 feet down. You can't stop a fish that big. If it gets one good tail kick, it's going.
Oh, wow.
So he did manage to land that one though, but
And how big are these fish? Some of these bigger ones.
That one. So I don't have a bump board. So my measurements are real loose. The fish can fully extend. I have a giant net. So I just have like a little tailor's tape. So it's like give or take an inch or two. But that one was 46. So it could have been 44. Or it could have been 48. Right. I'm guessing it was more of that 45 to 47. I know there's a lot of musky guys are really obsessed with the bump board and the inches and all that stuff. I don't give a shit.
Yeah. Right. I know whether it's 46 or 48. I mean, it's a big fish. I'm
just stoked we got one. I'm really trying to instill that into my guys too. Like it doesn't matter like the exact length. Let's just get an okay measurement. They're really easy to kill. So I try to not take them out of the water at all.
How do you do that? How do you get a fish when it comes into the net? How do you release that fish given all the sharp teeth and stuff?
Yeah, you got to be careful. People get opened up. That's for sure. I'm just super careful. So I got all the Loon makes these really good tools, whatever. Shout out Loon. Here's your free sponsorship for the day.
That's awesome. Yeah.
They are.
Matt's been on. So it's all, I think is he still down there at Loon?
Yeah. He's great. And Jeremiah Hool is the rep. And he's like, gotcha. Dude, he's just a badass, but they've got a bunch of tools that are specifically designed to, have you not lose fingers when dealing with those fish.
Okay.
And then, they're just kind of hanging in the net, and I just tell my guys, grab it by the tail. I slip the net out, and a lot of the photos that you see are just that fish kind of hanging in the water and
held by the tail.
Yep. And pretty much they kick off right after that. So it's a pretty flawless little technique, and people get a cool photo, and,
not a big deal. They're not trying to bite you at all, ever.
Yeah. I mean, when they come in real green, sometimes they'll do a little thrash in the net, but they seem to calm down. And, especially once you get the hook out of them, they're just kind of like, okay, like, take my photo and let me get out of here. Kind of.
Yeah. Right. Get it going. Wow. So, and then what's the line look like? What are you using there for the line?
Yeah. So I really like that, Scientific Anglers Tropical Titan. It's got like a 15-foot intermediate, integrated tip on there. The thing casts awesome. I mean, it jacks. And just having that little bit of intermediate is kind of perfect. A lot of the flies I fish are unweighted, so you can kind of drive them around timber, gives them a little bit better action. And then I'll fish sometimes, if I can get out there early in the spring, late April or whatever, I'll fish the Scientific Anglers 30-foot clear intermediate. It's like a cold water kind of line. It doesn't coil as bad in the spring, but 90% of the time I'm fishing that Tropical Titan. I fish that like for bass, for tiger musky, for everything.
Yeah, everything.
It's
that's cool.
Yeah, it's badass. Cool. It's sweet.
So you got the line, and you mentioned the boat. So you've got a kind of a unique boat, but when you're trolling up, so what if somebody was out there, maybe in a drift boat, they didn't have the elevation to see, how are they finding fish? What's that look like?
Just like trial and error, like just really studying, where muskie want to be in different water conditions, and just time on the water. I got a buddy that comes into the shop, Eric Sanchez. He takes his drift boat out there and he gets them. I mean, he's a good angler, and he's been out there a few times. There's a little pack of us in the Pacific Northwest. There's a guy, Randy, that goes out there quite a bit, where we're all kind of sharing info, but not a ton.
Yeah, right.
But we all, if somebody posts one up, it's always like the same, like 5 guys that are just jacked.
Sure.
So it's cool.
Gosh. So you go out there in a good day, like you said, what is getting into a few fish or sometimes more? Yeah.
I mean, that's the cool thing that I like about these species, the smallmouth, the carp, and the tiger muskies, is you're seeing fish. Your guys are seeing fish. Your optimism is high. The stoke level is high. That's the problem when chasing steelhead. You're like, there should be a fish there. I don't know if there is. So it's very different. But I mean, I've never not seen fish when I've gone out there. And I've seen as many as, 60 or 70 maybe in a day. They're kind of just everywhere some days. Other days, maybe you only see like 5 or 6.
On around wood, like you said, they're around structure. They're waiting, kind of hanging, and just kind of that's their story, right?
Yeah, until it heats up. And then once the weed beds grow, they move off of the wood and onto the weeds. And that's where things get a little bit more difficult, because there's huge weed beds in those lakes, and they'll be in the edges of them. They'll be in the middle of them. Yeah. They're a lot harder to track down. I mean, that's kind of just what you're targeting, and you'll get follows. So, you'll get fish coming and looking at your flies. So it kind of keeps you on your toes, but you start to learn the fish's behavior of the ones that are going to eat and the ones that aren't.
Yeah.
And it's pretty obvious when they come out.
What's the one that's going to eat? How does it differ from the non-eater?
So there's kind of 2 different ones that are going to eat. There's ones that are just kind of laid up either in wood or on a flat, sunning themselves, or, on a weed edge. And if you've got the right fly and you come across real slow, they'll come out kind of slow, but then they kind of slowly accelerate, and you're like, oh, he's going to eat it, but it's going to just be this like soft eat. And they do, or they refuse it. That one's kind of like a 50-50. When you throw it into wood and there's a fish in there, or you don't see a fish in there, and you start stripping and immediately something comes out, it's like, it's going to happen. I mean, it's just like, it's a great feeling, because you you just tell your dudes to get ready. It's like the best feeling as a guide. You know, it's like I see that fish come out probably before them, and I'm like, get ready, he's going to eat it. And you just see your client just like get jacked. They're like getting to the fighting position. They're like, they hunt down a little bit, they're stripping, and this fish comes over and absolutely destroys that ball of feathers. And I'm just screaming at him, you know, just like nail him. Like it gets real intense.
God, how do you nail them? How do you set it on those?
Strip set that fucker as hard as you can, as many times as you can.
You just keep doing it, right?
They're like, when do I stop? I'm like, when it hits the net. And then
keep stripping, just boom.
And they still don't get the hook in there a lot of the times. It's like, how? I mean, how many times have you like been trying to tie on a fly and you hook yourself so bad you got to like do like a surgical procedure to get that hook out? And these dudes are going like grown men and women just reefing on an 11 weight, and that fly just will not get in that fish's mouth.
Oh,
it just will not penetrate that sucker.
Yep.
So
that's it. So you miss so a lot of those. Well, some of those fish percentage you're not getting hooked. They're taking it, but you're not hooking up.
Oh yeah, I had a horrible run last year where it's like I think like 10 fish ate in a row, and we just never got tight to them.
Yep.
Now stirs is like sometimes you got to wait for them to turn on it, and it's like that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen until you've had it happen so many times. It's like telling guys not to set on their first steelhead, right?
Yeah.
They're going to lift.
Yeah.
So like, tell me how to guide somebody into a 4-foot fish accelerating at your fly. Like displacement of water is massive, and just be like, oh, just hold on a second.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Don't do anything.
Hold on. Okay, it's turned. Okay, now go ahead and set the hook. Like, no way. Like the adrenaline's, I can't wait. I don't expect my clients to wait. So, it's just, you know.
So you're casting in towards, so you have the tropical line you mentioned, you make the cast and you have unweighted flies. How is the fly, is it sinking down a bit? What's that look like before the fish are taking it?
Yeah, I have the best luck as soon as the fly hits the water to start moving it. Yeah. It's not a depth thing. They come from underneath, so you definitely don't want your fly too deep.
Yep.
Just right under the surface is just fine.
And just start stripping. And what's that strip look like?
So that's what's cool about the jerk changer. A lot of the other flies, there's the Optimus swine that's got a little reverse popper head, and if you do kind of a longer slow strip, that will walk the dog side to side under the water. But the jerk changer by Blaine it's dealer's choice. I mean, however you animate that fly, you can drive it however you want. So you can make it wiggle just like a swimming fish. You can do kind of short strips and it will walk the dog. You could do erratic strips and it will just look like a jerk bait, like crazy changes of direction, little 180s. It'll swirl up to the top and then kind of let it die and then pop again. So that's some of the most fun about it is after doing it for a couple of years, my guys are getting really good at understanding that they control that fly. It's not just huck it out like a woolly bugger, strip, pause, strip, pause. No. It does something different every time you throw it in there. You can run it over wood. The hook's kind of hidden in there, so it's almost weedless. It's sweet, man. It's really cool. Really cool.
That is cool. And the jerk changer tied differently. How is it tied differently versus say just the other changers or anything else out there?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Blaine would care that. I mean, people are tying them out there, but if you go on YouTube and just search jerk changer, there's a video of Blaine talking about it, but
Perfect.
he doesn't show how to tie it, but you see it in the water and you get it shows the shape of it. Gotcha. But basically the key to the jerk changer is the front of the fly has to be greater than half of the actual length of the fly. So that's created by like some smaller spines in the back, the hook, and then whatever hook, short shank hook. And then the front half is one long spine, usually like 35, 45, or 55 millimeter spine. Mm-hmm. So having that one piece that's not articulated, kind of an arrow-shaped trimmed brushes, as that water passes over it, that's what causes the erratic action.
Gotcha. Arrow-shaped as in the arrows pointed forward towards the eye.
Yeah, exactly. Just the way you want to trim that head. And it's all about the trimming.
Yep.
to get that right taper. But yeah, it's sweet. I tied a bunch of them up for bass, like kind of the smaller ones. They're like 3.5 inches or something. So they're
amazing.
It's slick.
Today's episode is sponsored by Drifthook, who has pre-packed fly assortments for every stage of your fly fishing journey. Each kit is organized by species and includes instructional videos and easy-to-follow guides. Their fly shop quality flies are hand-tied and inspected before being carefully packed into their durable, double-sided, water-resistant fly boxes. I've got one of those boxes right here, the Drifthook Streamer Surge, and it is super clean. It's packed with everything you need. Flies are well made. It's got a row of some beads. It's got a row of some rabbit strips. It's got a little bit of flash there. As I flip it over on the other side, it's packed with some smaller flies. It's got some muddlers, and it fits right there. Double-sided box, nice and clean. They have everything from nymphing to dry flies, streamers to Euro nymphs, and everything in between. If you're brand new to it or know somebody who wants to get into fly fishing or needs a good present, this is a great opportunity. I would love to get this thing in my stocking, I can tell you that much. You can check out Drifthook right now by heading over to drifthook.com and using SWING at checkout to receive 15% off your next order. That's Drifthook, DRIFTHOOK.com, drifthook.com, and use SWING, SWING, at checkout to get 15% off your next order and some of these sweet custom fly patterns. Okay, back to the show. I want to just take it back because I saw a video you did on totally changing the table here back to cold water.
Yeah.
But it was on cold water feet tips. This is a good one because, like I said, I'm heading out to some cold rivers. For anybody that's fishing this winter, right? It gets cold, and if you don't have boot foot waders, your feet can get really cold. Talk about that little tip you have there, and are there other little tips you have out there you've done, or is that something like kind of one-off stuff?
Yeah, so two tips for sure. Again, not my ideas. Shout out Ben Glick, friend, client turned friend over the last few years. Super smart dude. So boot foot waders, crazy expensive. Worth it? Absolutely. If you want to know why, there's a video on my Instagram where I have a new chart for Sims that will show you which waders to buy based on your wage, your rage level.
Oh, wow.
And your age.
I love that.
It's definitely a parody. The stupid part about it is it works because I did it. Everybody at the shop, people that come through, you do that addition and it's 100% guaranteed.
Remind us again what your Instagram is.
Mykiza, so just MYKIZHA. It's ironic because if anyone knows me, they know I absolutely hate trout fishing. That means rainbow trout in Russian. So I picked that name because the first steelhead they found was in Kamchatka and they called it Mykiza. And I was like, oh, that's cool. That's just like the original Mykis or whatever. Again, I'm an idiot. It's Russian for rainbow trout. So that's ironic that that's my name.
Right. There you go.
But yeah, so Ben's tip is, so it's going to cost you a little bit, but it's not going to cost you as much as boot foot waders. So everybody's got a pair of waders. Great. That's one part that you need. Everybody's got a pair of boots. Now, this is the tricky part. You're going to have to buy a second pair of boots. So if you wear a size 10 street shoe, your wading boot is an 11, right? Because you go up one size. With this system, you need to go up 2 sizes. So if you normally wear an 11, you're going to wear a 12 if your street shoe's a 10. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I was on that line. The one thing with me is sometimes I think maybe on half sizes you don't go up because I'm a 10.5 street shoe and I wear a 10 wader typically, or a 10 boot typically. So I'd probably go with 11.
So you wear a 10.5 street shoe?
Yeah.
And you wear a 10 wading boot?
Yep.
Dude.
You think that's bad?
That's very bad, Dave.
You think 11's the better one to go with?
Fuck, I would go with a 12.
Really?
Oh yeah, man.
Wow.
More space, the better. So again, all the stuff anyone's ever done bad, I've done. So when I started fly fishing, I have tiny feet. I have an 8.5.
Yep.
So I was like, oh, a 9's perfect. Wrong.
Nope.
wrong. You got all that neoprene and you got socks.
All that stuff. So they're building these boots when they say a 10, or because they don't have half sizes, right? 10, 11. They're building it for extra stuff in there.
No, it's still a 10. It's still a 10. It's just if you try to wear a street shoe, it's like try putting your street shoes on with waders. It's like it ain't going to happen because all that extra neoprene is taking up all that space. So yeah, you want to go at least a size, if not a size and a half. So if you're a half size, say you're a 9.5, don't get a 10, get an 11. Okay. And if you're a 10 and if you're a 10.5, get a 12, because all that extra room in there, and you want to like tie your boots as loose as you can because it's all about circulation. Right. So you want that extra room in there. So
this is good. So go with the 12. Go with the 12 boot and just keep it plenty of room in there. If you have like 10.5,
yeah, give yourself two sizes. So again, let's say you wear a 10 street shoe, get a 12 boot.
Gotcha.
What you're going to do next is you're going to buy those wet wading socks, those like neoprene socks that you wear in the summertime when you're not wearing waders, so your boot fits. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Yep. And they have that little hook sometimes. Just cut that off.
Yep.
And so you get your thinnest merino wool sock, or like a dress sock, something really thin. You put that on. Then you put on the neoprene wading sock. Then you get into your waders. So you have 6 millimeters of neoprene foam between your foot
instead of 3
instead of 3.
Right.
And it is night and day.
It works.
You will never be cold ever again. I don't care how
awesome.
cold the water gets.
Awesome. There's going to be some people really happy about this part in the episode. So
it is by far the best tip. I mean, and get just the cheapy wading boots because it's just going to be the wintertime. So like Simms $100 ones or whatever, they're fine. Just make sure they're 2 sizes big. Most people already have the wet wading socks.
Yeah.
Get a thin sock. You're just going to be like, holy shit. Like, this is so comfortable. I'm loving it.
That's cool. And on the thin sock, so there's no reason to go with more of a medium sock on that. The thinner merino is better than the thicker.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's all about air, right?
Yeah.
You want some air in there. So super thin merino wool, it's going to wick away any sweat. And there's going to be sweat because you're going to be warm. So in that neoprene, and then, in that boot, and it's unbelievable what a big difference it makes. So for $100, you could be warm all winter. I mean, frozen feet are no longer an option.
That's sweet. That's really sweet.
The other pro tip I will say is, shout out again, my buddy Jeff Arnold. He's the originator of the wrist sock. Again, somewhere on my Instagram, there's a video of it, and it's just what it sounds like. If you've got a bunch of socks, with blown out ankles or toes or whatever, and you're going to get rid of them, just cut that top half of the sock off, the one with the lines in it, like the crew part, and slide it over your wrist and then roll it. So it's like basically like a sweatband around your wrist. Then put your raincoat on. So you got all your clothes on, grab the wrist sock, throw it on your wrist, fold it over, put your raincoat on, and reef down your cuffs in front of that wrist sock. Because every time in Alaska, it's freezing cold. You get out there, somebody catches a king, you're, instantly elbow deep into the water, resuscitating it and, taking care of the fish. Well, you get done and half your sleeve is soaked all the way to your elbow, right? And it's like, God damn it, I got 8 more hours of this. Well, with wrist sock, as the water comes in, even the tightest waterproof cuff isn't waterproof. As you dip your arms in to release a fish or whatever you're doing, that sock soaks up all the water. So you unreef the jacket, grab that wet ass sock, throw it somewhere and pull out another pair and put them on. Boom.
No kidding.
Your stuff stays dry, stays warm.
The wrist sock. So the wrist sock, and that is just cutting off the lower end and using the tube sock part of it.
Yeah, using the top part that goes around like your calf and stuff.
Wow.
Yeah,
there you go. And roll it up in there, and then that just is it's going to get wet, but that it won't. The rest of your arm isn't going to get wet.
Yeah, you got like 10 pairs in your boat. I mean, I can't tell you how good a dry pair of wrist socks going on your wrist as an Alaskan guide.
Yeah.
Like, it's just the little things. Like, you slide that on, and you're just like, I can do it. I can do 8 more hours.
This is it. This is a total product. I mean, it's not out there. You can't buy a wrist sock.
Oh, I've been begging Easy at Sims. I'm like, make the wrist sock, like make it
Yeah.
out of like fleece or something, make it nice or whatever.
Have you thought about getting into the product side of the fly fishing business?
I haven't, but I'm like, somebody make. I don't even care. I'm like, just make it because I'm running out of socks. I mean, somebody.
So if we come up with the wrist sock, you wouldn't be too pissed if we had our wrist sock.
If you come out with the wrist sock, give 5% of all sales to Jeff Arnold because he came up with it, and you could do whatever you want. Yeah,
awesome. That's sweet. No, these are good. So these are the pro tips, right? I mean, you spend a year or years in Alaska and what you do in cold weather.
Yeah,
so this is good. Well, what else do you throw out there? Do you have video? I mean, are these tips videos? Do you have like more of this stuff out there?
Yeah, I mean, like on the Mega Men and stuff like that. There's some videos on my Instagram that I've put up and stuff. I use the Friday Night Flies a lot for a lot of Q&A. Like I said, there's not much fly tying involved. I mean, we tie a fly every time, but we're just bullshitting. But people will ask about all sorts of stuff, so it's kind of just like an open forum, really, of just sharing information. But yeah, I mean, that's just being out there all those days. I mean, that's where a lot of these products come from. A lot of guides and outfitters and stuff like that. They're doing the same thing, like Sims has got a badass jacket coming out. I can't say anything, but finally, after screaming at them for years, kindly, they've got a couple really cool features coming out that it's like, oh, hell yeah. Like this is the shit. So
nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, Sims definitely has some good stuff. I mean, obviously the waders have always been the backbone. Are you Sims waders and all that?
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm not going to say everything they make is the best ever. I'm not one of those like Sims ride or die, but their waders and their jackets, like you can't mess with them.
Yeah.
So like I love Filson for their like long underwear stuff. Their heavy merino wool, like they make the best.
Yep.
Whatever. They don't pay me to say that. They just do. Yeah. Patagonia's pretty much got the down game dialed. Like their jackets are, the warmest insulated jackets I wear. So I wear those. And then for the shit that gets, the piss beat out of it, I put on the Sim stuff. So the outer layer.
This is cool. Well, maybe we can go down again. I love that we're kind of all over the place here. But the gear is a big one, right? Winter. Like I'm going out. Lots of people are getting ready for winter. What else are we missing here? So you mentioned, I mean, that's a great one on Filson, right? And Patagonia. If you don't know, I mean, I just picked up a Patagonia fleece that I really am loving, but I don't have a Patagonia down. That would be a good tip. What else do you tell somebody? If you're getting ready, you got a client getting ready for a 35-degree and raining or whatever, 38 and raining. What do you tell them for the gear?
Yeah. So first and foremost, like don't wear a bunch of stuff, because it doesn't make you warmer. Again, you want air. You want that separation. So like a really good merino wool top and then just the thickest down coat you got. So like Patagonia makes a Roy Fitz, I think it's called, down. It's like 800 fill. You look like the kid from Christmas Story, but it's insane how warm that thing is.
So that's a big puffy. You'll wear a big puffy under, not a thin puffy, but a big one.
Oh yeah, it's puffy as I get. I wish they just made it without a hood. Like any companies out there, can you please just make like an 800 fill coat that doesn't have a hood, because
the hood gets wet.
It gets wet. It's just a soggy bitch up there. So it doesn't do anything, and it doesn't keep you warmer. Like having a hood on, it's just old BS. But so that, and then don't be afraid of rubber. Like I said, Sims makes great jackets, but out here it is, I mean, my buddy Ted likes to say it's a 2 raincoat day. I mean, it's got to be 1000% waterproof. And I don't care how much Gore-Tex is on there, it's going to wet out. What I mean by wet out is you're not going to be wet underneath, but it's going to be so sopping ass wet that you are going to be cold.
Yeah.
So, I hate to say it, but, Grundon's has like $120 jacket. It's a quarter zip. I forget what they call it, but it's like their most lightweight PVC kind of rubber. As far as a guide goes, where you're not casting or doing much really hardcore athletic stuff in the wintertime besides rowing, it's like a key piece of equipment. It's always in my boat for when it's like calls for like a quarter inch of rain.
If it's dumping.
Oh, you throw that thing on, you're so comfortable because just the water runs right off. It
does, and it's not getting wet. That one isn't seeping through, right? You're not.
No. I mean, it's 100% bomb proof. That's a. If you're going to Alaska for your first year of guiding or your 15th, if you don't have one of those, you are messing up.
You know, and I think I was just up there, right? We did a trip and it got, definitely a couple nights. I mean, it rained a ton there this year. Like it flooded all over the place, but we had really nice weather. But one day and a half, it got really cold and wet. And I had one of those, I think it might be different, but it was kind of the rubber. It was the Grundens. And I put it on just with my normal stuff. And I probably didn't have the right merino layers and stuff. But I mean, I kind of got cold under that. And then so I went back to my old Sims, right? I got this old Sims jacket that's just been killer for years. Put that on, and even though I had that damp layer underneath and stuff was a little bit wet, I was still much warmer, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, especially if you're fishing. So that's the thing is like if you're the guest in Alaska or wherever, when you're fishing, you're pretty active.
Yeah, that's right.
So like you generate a lot of heat. So like you want that Gore-Tex, you want that Sims.
That's it.
A lot of the time, if you got good anglers in Alaska, you're just bumping the anchor down if you're fishing for kings or you're just, netting fish or whatnot, but you're getting hammered by the elements. So having something like that is always nice to have. Yep.
That's cool. Yeah, no, that is a good one. And so you got the jacket. What else are you throwing out there? You got the wrist, you mentioned the wrist sock, right?
Got to have the wrist sock. Okay. Yeah. One other good tip. This one's real good too. So everybody's got like a merino buff or whatever, whatever for sun. So if you fold that thing in half and then put it on with the open side facing up, like towards your mouth or whatever. And so does that make sense? Like you fold it in half and put it on. So it's like almost like a pouch going around your neck.
Yep.
I did this. This was on accident. I was fishing. It was one of those days where it was a 2 raincoat day and it was just rain all over me. Well, we landed a nice steelhead. I had like those little heat packets or whatever inside my gloves because it was so freaking cold that like my fingers just didn't want to work. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like getting ready to tail this fish and I'm like, shit, where am I going to put these? So I like take them out and I just tuck them into basically my neck where my neck gaiter is at. And then we're dealing with the fish, take a photo, whatever. And I forget about them. And later in the day, it gets a little cold. So I zip my raincoat all the way up and kind of do like the little shoulder shrug or whatever. And it was just all this heat like around my neck. I was like,
oh, nice.
I was like, what the hell? And I remembered, oh yeah, I put those in there. So I was like, well, this is a pretty good idea. So the next time I went out, I got like 2, put them in front, and 2, put them on the back of my neck in that buff. So they couldn't slide out or get out. And then when you zip your raincoat all the way, tight or your jacket, it presses against your neck. And so it's like having just like a heat pad around your whole neck
awesome.
The whole day. It's like,
yeah.
And, obviously you got a lot of blood going through those arteries and stuff in your neck. So it kind of just heats you up.
Yeah.
That's
killer. There you go. So there's another one.
Yeah.
What are your gloves? What do you got? What type are you doing for the gloves?
Jack hates me for this because like every time people are like buying gloves, I'm like, just go get the fingerless ones from Andy and Bax. I still stand by that. Sims has a great pair of wool fingerless gloves too. So if you don't have an Army surplus store like I do around the corner,
Andy Bax, right?
That's a great great thing to pick up. But fingerless wool gloves, they get wet, they stay warm. You got your digits, they're warm. I mean, they're easy to get on, they're easy to get off. They're the least expensive ones.
Bring an extra pair if you want, but you really don't have to because even when they're wet, you squeeze them out and they're still super warm.
I mean, I've literally tried every glove on the planet, and I always come back to those ones.
That's the biggest tip. What's your hat? Just to round this off, what do you got there on a cold day?
Yeah, so. I love the Loomis corduroy hats, but not in the winter because they just soak water up. I like a low profile hat because I like to wear either a sweatshirt hoodie or, if it starts raining, I like that hood up without, a giant hat taking up space up there. Mm-hmm. So yeah, any ball cap, it's pretty much good to go, or just a beanie. I don't really like wearing a beanie because I wear sunglasses, obviously, because I'm fishing and it kind of pulls down on them. So yeah, just standard ball cap, whatever, dealer's choice.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, sometimes I'll work the, have the ball cap and then have the wool cap that can kind of go on top and fold down over, right? You got that look, which can help.
Yeah.
But it's wool, right? I mean, that bottom line, we've talked about the stuff. It's wool. Down is the one thing that's it's tricky, right? Because if you get it wet, then you're screwed. Do you find that puffy Patagonia, you are always keeping it dry under there?
Yeah, I mean that's the thing I hear people say too. They're like, "Oh, but if it gets wet, it doesn't stay dry." And I'm like, "Well, how is it getting wet?" And they're like, "Oh, water gets through my coat." I'm like, "Well, it sounds like a raincoat problem, not a down problem."
That's right.
Or people are like, "Well, when you fall in," it's like, "Don't fall in."
Yeah.
I mean, that's,
and even if you do, you have your wrist sock, right? That
you got your wrist sock. Yeah, exactly. But if you're prone to falling in, you got to reevaluate you got to take a look at other things first, like maybe getting a wading staff or something. But I don't find the down to have an issue because it doesn't get wet.
Yeah. It doesn't get wet at all. Cool. Well, this has been fun. I mean, I think, we're obviously putting in a good chunk of time. This has been amazing. I think some of the stuff we're just going to have to send people out, and even if they can't connect with you, on a guide trip right away, they could follow you, like you said, on Instagram. I got a couple of random ones to take us out of here if it sounds good. Unless you want to throw anything else out there on tiger musky. We focus on that today a little bit, but anything else we want to touch on before we head over and take it out?
I mean, just, not necessarily just tiger musky, but I mean, just there's so many species of fish out there that, like, wherever you're living at, like we interviewed some guys. God, where the hell were we? I can't even remember the state. It was last summer, but like they were chasing snakehead. Like they love it. Like, or like bowfin or something like that. Like they just love these weird species. And if you've got fish around you that people aren't fishing, like chase them and see like what they're going to eat or different flies and stuff, because I think it makes you a better angler and it's just fun, right? Yeah. I mean, can't always just be, on the Babine in October, right?
No, and you wouldn't want to be. I mean, I guess, no, I mean, you would want to, I mean, some people would want to be, but I find that steelhead, right, or just anything, it's nice to mix up. I guess that's that journey, right, of your fly fishing where you start out, at that phase where you're trout fishing, it's great, and then you're like, oh, okay, I'm tired of this, and you keep working up, and you're challenging. I mean, do you find yourself, is that what you're doing? You're just challenging yourself more?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's what's become pretty crystal clear over the last 5 or 6 years is, people are like, well, what do you like to fish for? And I'm like, stuff that's really tough to catch. Like, I don't know what's wrong with me, but like, that's what I'm attracted to is like, oh, is it really hard to get to? They're like, yeah. I'm like, sign me up, which when I think about it, I'm like, I don't want it to be hard, but clearly I do.
Yeah.
Or I wouldn't be doing it. So the more challenging it is, the more you got to figure it out. I love the fly design aspect, like just cracking the code. I won't get into it, but like the last day of carp fishing this summer blew my mind. I had a buddy, another guest, client turned friend, this guy, Zach Vars. I mean, he threw like a 4-inch articulated crawdad that was scaring everything at a carp, and this thing moved like 10 feet and absolutely pounded the hell out of this and like ragdolled it trying to kill it. I mean, it was like the most aggressive eat I've ever seen, and it was from a carp, and that just blew my socks off. I was like, okay, well, I've been doing it this way the last 3 years and we've been catching them, but like these things will charge and crush like a big articulated, like 1/0 hook style fly. It didn't make any sense, So yeah, just seeing all that stuff, everything's real new, like being a steelhead guide for the last 10, 12 years, whatever it is now.
Yeah. You've seen it all.
Yeah. You see a lot of it. And now it's like all this stuff is new and challenging, and the fish are badass, and it's just,
that's right.
Yeah, keeping it fresh.
How many guys do you see out there chasing, wherever you're at, chasing carp?
So my first year, 0. Second year, which is this last summer, I guess, there's like 4 boats out there.
Yeah.
One of them is a client, this guy, Fred Ramsey, and he goes out with his brother, Mark, and they catch a couple. It's really hard because they're just on a trolling motor. And then there's another boat out there that I think the guy just came into the fly shop the other day, and we were talking a little bit. And then there's this one boat that it's kind of an older gentleman. He's being a real dick. He is following me everywhere.
Oh, right.
I mean, everywhere I go.
Well, like you go to the boat ramp and he's there putting in his boat.
Like, no, but like as soon as I go to a spot, I see him pull up and I'm like,
Oh,
okay,
wow.
this is annoying. And we'll like fish it for a little bit. Then I'll move spots. We're there for like a minute and I hear his boat and he just pulls up and he'll be like 20 feet from me.
Wow. And you're in a big area, big river.
We're in the Columbia River.
Yeah,
It's
you're in a
freaking
gigantic
massive.
river.
It's just like, what are you doing? And like, I try to give people the benefit of the doubt, being like, he's old. He just is trying to figure it out. He wants to catch carp. I get it. But like, if I see him out there this summer, which I'm probably going to, I'm probably just going to have to motor over there and be like, hey man, like I obviously don't own the river, but like, where I'm fishing, you see all the spots I'm fishing. Can you just go to those spots when I'm not there and we can kind of share this area?
Strange.
Because like, it ruins it for me because like usually it's just me and my client. We have all this water and it's like, oh, it's nice.
Yeah, you're
in
a gigantic river with 4 boats.
Yeah. And then you turn around and it's like, there's 2 boats right there. It's like, guys,
amazing.
What are you doing?
Nuts.
And the other thing is they just can't get as shallow. So sometimes they're kind of just on the outskirts, like, staring at you, because.
Oh, right. Yeah. You're doing your thing.
I mean, I'm in like, I'll be in 6 inches of water sometimes. And it's like, your trolling motor ain't going to go that shallow,
Oh, that's cool.
So, yeah, this is kind of I tell my guys, I'm like, book as many days as you want in the summer that are left because this is the golden years of carp fishing in Oregon. I mean, it's just going to get busier and worse out there.
I know.
But right now they are fucking eating everything. And I'll see 500 fish tailing in a day. I mean, it's absolute insanity.
Where do you send somebody right now? We're not going to be able to dig into carp. They could connect with you, obviously. Where else could somebody, where would you send somebody if they want to just learn kind of online, whatever, do it yourself?
Yeah. I mean, I think a great training ground for carp is Sauvie Island. It's no secret. A lot of people know about it. There's a bunch of different ponds out there. If you time it right, they can be pretty clear. If you don't, they can be pretty dirty. But that's a good way to stock. You don't need a boat. You can hike around a lot of those ponds and areas. Yeah. But anywhere anywhere you can get into where it's a shallow flat and there's a bunch of lakes that have them. There's, obviously the Willamette and the Columbia, there's a lot of space out there. But the bigger rivers, it's kind of a boat thing. There's definitely places you can hike into. I don't want to blow them up because there's very few guys that do it.
Sure.
And so I'd hate to ruin their spots for them. But yeah, Sauvie's is a great way to get started. But it's pretty amazing how it is right now. I would argue that the Columbia River is probably the best carp fishing destination in the world. I know Beaver Island.
Beaver Island, right.
It's supposed to be something special. I haven't been out there. But I've heard that, the fish can be kind of spooky or whatever. Right now we can get so close to them on the Columbia that if you can just get that fly in front of them, for God's sakes, just put it in front of that fish and he's going to eat. But they spook, they spook a lot.
Wow. Yeah. I was just looking back 102, we're episode 102 we had Kevin, or who was it? Let's see here. Kevin Morlock. We went to Beaver Island. So a lot of these places, you know what I mean? I'm kind of living vicariously, obviously, through some of the people out there. I hope to, my goal is to get around to all these places, right? It's not going to happen ever, with 400 episodes, but at least gives us something to be, set a goal for. Where are you heading next as we take it out of here? Where's your next big trip kind of, you talked about one, right, coming up here?
Yeah. I'm heading to Mexico December 2nd. I kind of had an epiphany, a year and a half ago or so. I was just working all the time and I wasn't doing much. I just guiding, a little bit of a slow season. Maybe I don't know, go camping or something. And I'm like, man, like nothing against all the guys I guided in Alaska, but like everybody works their ass off till they're like 62 or 65. And then, I guide them and they're like, I just retired last year. I'm just living it up now. And it's like, yeah, but like you can barely get in the boat. Like, you're taking a nap at 2 p.m. Like, I'm glad you're living it up, but like, I want to do that shit now. Yeah. So I just started putting money aside every guide trip or whatever. And just started, getting smart about pro tip, if you don't have a credit card that's earning you sky miles, you are fucking up massively.
That's right. That works.
I mean, just use it for everything that you buy. It's not hard. Just are you going to buy something that you're already going to buy? Then just buy it with that credit card. And then when you get home, just pay it off.
Yeah.
And all your flights will be free within like a year, right? You're just going to earn it. So long story short, I just started booking shit crazy. I mean, I went a lot of places this year. I feel very fortunate, but I'm just done working and not doing anything. So going to Mexico with some fellas for a few days bass fishing, and then going out to fish with Blaine in Virginia in February. So we're hosting a trip out there. Guys are pretty jacked to chase muskie with the man himself.
Oh wow, you're doing it.
Yep. And then I host a trip every spring up to the Skeena. So we stay with Brian and Lizzie Niska, just two of the best people ever.
Oh yeah. We just had Stuart Foxall on, and he noted Brian, and we did an episode with Brian a few months ago. It was a really good one.
Brian's super good businessman, awesome angler,
super nerdy about his stuff, right? He gets into it.
Very smart. Yeah, he's very, very smart. And just a super good dude. All the people that work at his lodge, from the chefs to the support staff and the guides, I would give them A+++. I mean, it's if you haven't been fishing with him, it's a no-brainer. It's absolute one of the best times I've ever had. So we go up there every April, and then I'll mess around. Probably go down Louisiana and fish with Jeff. He's coming out here for the first time. So
there you go. What's he going for? Where are you gonna take him?
He's all about the carp program because he's a redfish guide. So he's like, yeah, let's go out there and tear it up. So
isn't that amazing? That, like, think of this, a guy, redfish guy, maybe tons of people want to go for redfish that are probably here, or well, a lot of people. Yeah. But he wants to come here to chase carp, which, like you said, some guys come to the shop and like, what, carp?
Oh yeah. He's jacked. He can't wait. So I'm really looking forward to it. So yeah, I got some things on the books. I'm just stoked, it's just,
yeah, sounds like you got things going. It sounds like, we take, again, this episode is awesome because you took us back to Alaska. We dug in. We weren't, I didn't even think we were going to talk about that, but it was such a cool perspective, right? And taking us there, 6 years of Alaska, just being drilled, and you put your time in, right? You probably look at that, right? You put your 6 years in to be where you are now.
Yeah, I mean, if there's people out there that are thinking they want to become a guide, two things I would say are super important. One, go to Alaska for at least a couple of years, because you're going to get hundreds of days on the water experience, and you're going to stare at water. It's going to make your eyes really good. You're going to be able to see shit that just people don't see after a while. And get a job at a fly shop. Even if it's a day or two a week.
Let's give a shout out to the fight. I mean, you've noted it a few times, but is it Jack? Is it Jack now, or who's running the show?
Yep, Jack Hagen's been in the Hagen family for, I think this June will be 30 years.
Exactly. And his dad a while back, right?
Yep, John. Mm-hmm.
John.
Yep. And just like a real kind of like local feel to it. We've had a lot of clients for many years coming in there, and we got a great team. We got, Jonesy's in there, and Brian's in there, and Colby's in there, and obviously Jack and myself and a couple other people. Ken fills in. Just a good team. And I've told Jack this before too. Best boss I've ever worked for. I mean, absolute. That's a huge reason I've worked there for like going on 8 years.
That's Jack.
We work really well together. Yeah. He's just a good boss, man. You know.
I think that's really cool. Yeah, I mean, that's obviously a huge part of it, right? Getting somebody that you're, working well with and jiving with and stuff like that. And it's cool to see. Yeah, they've been out there a while, and there's, I guess, across the pond. Well, let's see, the Portland Fly Shop, right? Is remind me again who's running the show over there. You probably know everybody around.
Yeah. So they're on 14th and Gleason. Jason Osborne.
Yeah, Jason.
I think John Wall and Mo might be partial owners. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah. But was Jason connected to with you? Were you with Jack there a while back?
Yeah. So Jason was the shop manager at our shop for many, many years.
Yeah, exactly.
And so he's got his own shop now down in Portland. Awesome shop. Again, really good crew. Nick's over there. John and Mo are over there. Devin's over there, a couple other guys too.
Yeah.
Super nice guys, really good. They got their downtown scene on lock.
Yep. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
that's
Portland's
cool.
a really good area as far as like, we don't really feel like a lot of competition with the fly shops. We all kind of work together.
No, there's another one. Like, I mean, there's not a ton, right? You got who's out there that's like, I mean, you got the Orvis. I went to the Orvis fly shop recently. That was cool to connect with those guys. We've had at least one episode on there.
I was kind of talking about real fly shops, but snap, Orvis,
nice.
You like that? Shots fired. No, I dig
like
the guys. I dig the guys over.
What's your take on that? What's your take on that, Eric? Because it's kind of like, Orvis is this really unique thing, right? They kind of have like everything. I mean, they got all their products. They got their Orvis endorsed shops. That's all evolved over the time. But what's your take? Because Orvis is definitely, you guys probably don't have much Orvis in your shop, right?
Sure. Yeah. I'll bend your ear for just a couple minutes on the Orvis thing. So kind of gone full circle. So when I first started getting into fly fishing stuff and steelheading, a buddy of mine that used to guide and work there named Matt McCrary had these stickers made that say, proud to not be an Orvis endorsed guide. And he would stick them everywhere because you pay Orvis and then you're an Orvis endorsed guide and blah, blah, blah.
Oh, is that right? They pay him, right?
So that's what I was understood as. Then, and my joke with Orvis is like, people are like, why don't you like Orvis? I'm like, they make great dog beds. I don't know what you guys are talking about.
That's right. Yeah, they got some good hunting stuff too.
Yeah. So, so then I started fishing more and more with my buddy Jeremiah Houle. He's an Orvis rep, loon rep, SA rep. And, he starts, because I'm kind of pretty outspoken about that type of stuff. And he's like, man, I think, you change your opinion if you knew a little bit more about them. So he, it's family owned. It hasn't been sold to a bigger business. So it's like, okay, I kind of respect that. All the rods are made in, I hate to feel like I'm promoting Orvis right now, but because, I'm kind of biased to Loomis, but all the rods are built in the U.S. Except for like their low model, like the Clearwater.
Yeah.
And then from what I've heard, which I can't believe this is true, but I've heard from a reliable source, is that how like Patagonia gives 1% back to the planet.
Yeah.
I've heard that Orvis gives 5%, and that's gross.
Yeah.
And I've heard that Orvis gives 5% net, which is insane.
5% net. Yeah. So after everything, they give 5.
Yeah. So if that's true, I'm like, why aren't you guys promoting the heck out of that? Because that's a huge deal. Because most fly fishermen are environmentalists. Men, women, whatever. So hearing that, I'm less inclined to really dig at them. And I know quite a few guys that are Orvis endorsed, and that is like, you can't just pay the money. They actually fly out and like vet you and stuff like that.
Yeah, the vet you, right? It's not. Yeah.
So I'm not, I'm not too prideful to be like, hey, I've been wrong about companies before, and I don't feel like I should rip on them that much anymore. So maybe they are a pretty good company.
Yeah.
That being said, do we carry them at the store?
No, but I agree. I mean, I'll follow, in Patagonia too, you mentioned, 1%. I mean, they actually are giving all their profits now to conservation.
Yeah, I saw that.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, so that is the cool story, and we've done a number of Orvis episodes. I don't know how many we've had on, but they've all been good. We had Perkins on, and he chatted about again the guy who ran the show there for a while. So I think it is obviously a great company, and but there's a bunch of great companies out there. We've talked about a lot of them today as well.
Yeah, and I mean, if when you're that big of a company, that massive, like you're just gonna you're gonna get a little bit of flack. It's just part of the deal, totally. But. It's just one of those things. Awesome. They make good stuff.
They do. Well, give me a couple. This is back to the rapid fire quick one here. We taking it all the way back to the good news at the start. Just quickly, there's other rivers out there, right? The Connectoc that are in that area of kind of like we said, Kuskokwim Bay. Did you fish a lot of the other rivers out there?
No. So like I get that a lot. People are like, where should I go in Alaska, or where should I do this? I'm like, I have like such a narrow knowledge base in Alaska. Yeah, I could tell you what bars to avoid in Anchorage, and I can tell you what the fishing is like in Goodnews. That's it.
Right.
That's all I got.
Good. So what about, so on the bar, so I've noticed a few beverages. Do you have a beverage of choice in your, when you're out there time flies?
Yeah, I used to drink a lot of red wine, but it's just so goddamn sugary. It's just like, I couldn't do it anymore. So I'm a big tequila guy. A tequila soda is probably one of the most refreshing things ever. So,
what's it called?
Just a tequila soda, just tequila with soda water. They're trying to make them fancy now. They call them ranch water.
Okay.
That's not a thing, people. I'm here to tell you that it's just not. Just because you're making it with the Topo Chico, it's not a different thing. It's just you're just a fancy tequila soda. That's all that is there. So yeah,
perfect. And so on that line, have you ever taken getting into the alcohol consumption? I say this because I'm getting ready to kind of take a nice, you hear about the sober October, but just taking a little break. Do you ever take a little break from the alcohol drinking to, you know what I mean, like rejuvenate yourself, or what's that look like?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's like, they say you need like 72 hours to, replenish your liver or whatever. It's like September, I was going to Canada, back and forth, traveling a lot of places. So it took like, a week and a half off or something. But Colby and I made the plan to, after Mexico, and the first of the year, we're going to do a dry January and just take a good chunk of time off. During COVID, shit got out of control, so it's been scaling back slowly ever since then.
That's right.
I think a lot of people got in that boat too. But it's important to take little breaks. One of my favorite sayings is everything in moderation, including moderation. So
that's right.
Yeah,
there you go.
If it's starting to affect your daily life, I'm not here to promote people that say you should be drinking all the time or anything. But
no, the moderation is the key. That is not always easy to do, right? Especially you have a tough day and whatever, like all this stuff. There's so much stuff to partake in.
I mean, one of my own pro tips for myself that I noticed is, like, if I'm making a tequila soda or margarita or something, just put one shot in, because I could put literally 8 in. I'm going to have the same amount of margaritas. Okay.
Right.
I'm going to have 3 tequila sodas between tying flies and going to bed over 3 hours or whatever. So they don't need to be like 2 shots or 3 shots. So that's been like, again, that's like one of those moments where it's like, wow, you're just figuring this out. It's like, yeah. So that was a huge bonus for me.
Nice.
Yeah.
So that's a good tip. That's we got our tequila tip. So nice, man. Well, this has been fun. I think, like we said, we definitely didn't go deep into a lot of the specific species stuff, but I feel like just getting kind of a look at your background is really interesting. So we'll have to keep in touch with you, man, and like maybe touch base in a year or so down the line and see how things are looking, and maybe, you know what I mean, just keep touch there. But yeah, anything else before we get out of here? We'll send everybody, I guess flyfishportland.com is the best place to connect with you.
Yeah, that's the website, like I said, or, slide into the DMs on Instagram. I'm pretty quick about getting back to people that way. I mean, Colby and I have gone back and forth. We might start like a little podcast, maybe like once every 2 month thing. Yeah. Just the Friday Night Flies thing is kind of just extended onto that.
You should do it. It's work. I mean, obviously it's a lot of work, but yeah, you guys it'd be a fun, it just gets it out there in another forum, and it's a good place to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say anybody going to Alaska, though, this is one thing that all the guides would absolutely love, is just take a casting lesson before you go. For the love of God, just spend the $100. Even if you think you're the world's best caster, just go with a professional casting instructor and just be like, hey, I'm going to Alaska. We're going to be throwing 8 and 9 weights. Like, this is the rod I'm going to be doing. Just get dialed up a little bit, because, it can cost $1,000 a day or more to be up there. And I can't tell you how many trips I've seen that would have been so much better, because, we're basically teaching these people how to cast for like 2 days. Yeah. And then they get to fish the last, 3 or whatever, 4.
Right.
So it will greatly increase your fun.
Yep.
It will increase your catch rate, because I can tell you right now, as a guide, when we get somebody that can't cast at all in Alaska, you're not going to have a very good day.
No.
That they've basically written you off, even if they're super nice. But in the back of their head, they're like, well, I'm not going to take them to the A shit, because they're not going to be able to get it done.
Yeah, exactly. They can't reach the spot or whatever.
Yeah. So
yeah, that's good. How do you do it when you're doing your hosting program? Do you find yourself getting plenty of fishing in, or do you find yourself kind of not as much?
Plenty of fishing. We got like a little core group of like maybe 6 to 10 dudes that kind of go everywhere with us.
Gotcha.
And they're all really good sticks. So it's nice. You show up hosting a trip. It's nice because I know the guides aren't going to be struggling. It's like plug and play. It's like, they're good, man. Just tell them where to go and they'll catch.
Gotcha. So you got a guy coming in for one trip and they're like, well, we're doing this one next, whatever, a new trip. And they're on that too.
Yeah, exactly. So, they're good fishermen. We can show up and you just kind of take your guide's cue. Like I hosted a trip to Wisconsin. Like I was saying, we fished with Will and I didn't land a fish, but I think everybody else did.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just fun hanging out with guys and seeing different parts of the country. Exactly. That's really what it's about.
It is. Yeah.
I don't need to catch another fish, but
no,
it's fun to see them.
Nice, Eric. Well, like we said, flyfishportland.com and on Instagram. We'll put all the links out there. But thanks again for all the time today. We'll definitely check back with you and keep in touch moving forward. Yeah,
it's been fun, Dave. Thanks for having me on, man.
So there you go. You can head over to wetflyswing.com/393. wetflyswing.com/393. It's going to get you some of those show notes we talked about today, a number of episodes that we've highlighted, that he highlighted in this episode, and people we've had on that he's connected with. So tons of great resources. We're going to hopefully have some good videos in there for you, at least a couple, to give you some more content to keep this one going strong. As we are getting closer and closer to the end of the year, getting closer to 400 episodes, we are excited about the upcoming year, all the giveaway season. Really, it's the giveaway year we have going. We just finished up a quick one this holiday season. We are looking at heading out for a Euro trip, Euro school. We got a Grand Slam we're working on, so we got some salt, some fresh water. If you get a chance, it'd be great to connect with me, Dave, at wetflyswing.com. Let me know if you have a trip in mind that you'd love to connect with us on. We're putting together basically some of the guests we've had that are some of the biggest names you know of and trust. We're heading out there to fish with them, and we'd love to get you on the water, get you into some of these big fish, and learn and kind of upscale everything we have going with the podcast. It's kind of that next level. We got everything we going on, here we always have this going on at the podcast, but the chance to get out and take what we've learned here, turn into our school, learn from the best, and just keep it rolling on. I'm excited for a big year. I'm excited to connect with you, and anytime Wet Fly Swing on social media, and I look forward to catching you on the water. I'm going to get out of here. I don't want to waste any more of your time today, so I hope to maybe catch you soon, and I hope you are having a good afternoon, good evening, or good morning, wherever you are in the world, and I look forward to talking to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show. For notes and links from this episode, visit wetflyswing.com.